This is a decrease of $31.8 million in the expense budget since adoption. Included in the budget are new needs totaling $7.1 million in fiscal 2024, and a variety of other adjustments totaling $24.5 million in fiscal 2024. This is largely driven by the recent DC 37 collective bargaining agreement, which totaled over $12 million in fiscal 2024. I am excited to see that DC 37 was able to secure a fair contract and a raise that their members deserve. Today, we will talk once more about infrastructure and about how this budget supports the department's efforts to invest in neighborhoods in every borough, improve street safety, and meet the benchmarks mandated by the New York City Streets Plan. I note, as I have at nearly every hearing this year, that many neighborhoods, particularly in the outer borough communities and communities of color, are in desperate need of new and improved infrastructure. We need a budget that supports these efforts, and I question whether an executive budget that includes $27.9 million in PEGs in fiscal year 2024 will have a negative impact on our shared goals for better, safer transportation citywide. Before we hear from the Department of Transportation, let me take a moment to recognize that we've also been joined by Councilmember Ariola. I would like to also thank my committee staff, and Councilmember Ari Kagan. I would like to thank the committee staff who have helped prepare for this hearing: Michael Sherman, Senior Financial Analyst; Chima Obachir, Deputy Director; Sam Breitbart, Committee Counsel; Mark Chen, Committee Counsel; Kevin Katowski, Senior Legislative Policy Analyst; John Basile, Senior Legislative Policy Analyst; my Policy and Budget Director, Jack Siegenthaler; and my Chief of Staff, Renee Taylor. I will now ask the Committee Counsel to go over some procedural items and swear in the representatives from the Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Chair. My thanks to Michael Sherman, Dan Krupp, Casey Lashke from Council Finance for preparing all of today's hearings. The whole team works really hard behind the scenes, making this look effortless up here. I'm now going to turn to my committee counsel, Mike Toomey, to swear in our witnesses, and we can begin testimony.
Good morning. If you raise your right hands, please. Do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, and you will honestly and faithfully answer council member questions? Idanis Rodriguez?
Yes, I do.
Margaret Forgione? I do. Paul Ochoa?
I do.
Rick Rodriguez? Thank you. You may begin.
To all the family members of the City Council, myself being one of yours, just because you left the council doesn't mean that you will stop being part of this family. And to my great friend, Councilmember Narcisse, from the beautiful island Hispaniola that we come from, all those wood used in this building was brought from the island of Hispaniola that we both share, Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So when I'm sitting here ready to testify, it's more than being able to speak on behalf of Mayor Eric Adams, but it's a lot of history, especially at the time when we are dealing with immigrants coming in, knowing that I was that kid that didn't speak the language. And then the city gave me this opportunity to be a teacher, council member, and now be here to testify on behalf of Mayor Eric Adams. It's a testimony that if we did it, all those children that is coming, the new immigrant, they will be the future elected official and the future commissioner too. In the name of Mayor Eric Adams and almost 6,000 men and women at DOT, which I would like to ask everyone, when you see anyone taking care of the pothole, resurfacing the street, the signal system, say thank you to them, because they're running the largest transportation system in the whole nation. So we are here again in this conversation about this project, where the council administration will be working together to be sure that DOT will continue having all the resources that we need to continue making our city the safest one for pedestrians and cyclists. Good morning, Chair Brooke Powers, Chair Brannan, and members of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and Committee on Finance. I'm Danis Rodriguez, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Transportation. With me today are Margaret Fugioni, First Deputy Commissioner, Paul Ochoa, Executive Deputy Commissioner, and Reed Rodriguez, Assistant Commissioner for the Intergovernmental and Community Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of Mayor Eric Adams on DOT fiscal year 2024 executive budget and fiscal year 2023-33 capital plan. This budget reflects Mayor Adams' commitment to protect critical programs that support working New Yorkers while simultaneously preparing for the economic headwinds by continuing a strong track record of fiscal responsibility. We appreciate the Mayor's continued investment in DOT during the city's disciplined fiscal approach and the support that we've been getting from the City Council too. This budget will allow DOT to continue critical safety work, redesigning intersections to make them sacred spaces and making this city the safest city for pedestrians and cyclists in the nation. All the municipalities across the United States and the globe, they're looking at the role model that DOT New York City represents. This budget will also allow us to reimagine the use of public space, invest more in working class and middle class communities, and communities of color, make the city more accessible for all New Yorkers, including people with disabilities. There's 1 million New Yorkers with disability, and it's a matter of time when many of those who are not in disability will join the family in the future. Maintain our infrastructure, including nearly 800 bridges, and continue to operate the Staten Island Ferry. New York City has the largest transportation system in the whole nation, while the larger network of bike lanes, bus lanes, pedestrian plazas, open streets, and outdoor dining. And by the way, many of them are not included in the street master plan. All of this is possible thanks to the partnership between the administration and the council. You can see a breakdown of DOT $1.4 billion by 2024 spend budget in my testimony, as you can see in the screen today and you have in front of you. By 2024, spend budget in million is total to 1.4. Again, for the purpose of time, you are seeing the screen, you have in the testimony, but this is the 1.4 operation that allows our agency to have all the resources that we need to continue making our streets safer, to continue running the ferry, resurfacing our street. You can see a breakdown. DOT's proposed $33 billion for fiscal year 23-33 capital plan in my testimony, which also is on the screen, and you have it too. FY24-33 capital commitment plan total of $33 billion for bridges, street reconstruction, resurfacing, sidewalks, traffic, ferries, vehicle facilities, and other needs. On Vision Zero, this administration is committed to Vision Zero, and the safety of all New Yorkers is a top priority for Mayor Adams and DOT. Mayor has been very clear, traffic violence is another type of violence that requires action to address it. This is reflected by significant investments. DOT current 10-year capital plan, FY23-33, invests approximately $4 billion in Vision Zero. And our expense budget invests an average of about $260 million each year in Vision Zero. Now, there's going to be a question on how do we decide, how do we invest, how much do we put on Vision Zero? This is the dollars that we invest. This commitment is working. As I testified earlier this year, traffic fatality in New York City dropped in 2022 for the first time since 2018. And New York City is defying national trends for pedestrian deaths. But as Mayor Adams had made clear, the only acceptable number of traffic fatality is 0. We are committed to doing more. DOT also remains focused on creating a more equitable city by action, not just word, where their transportation network meets the need of all New Yorkers regardless of race, ability, or economic status. DOT is prioritizing a street design investment in higher need neighborhood based on the priority investment area laid out in the New York City street plan, while still being guided by data such as crash histories and slow bus speed. I was part of co-prime on that plan, and for me it's an honor to be here testifying in front of you to explain how we are applying our street master plan. While it's still being guided by data such as crash histories and slow bus speed, we are also committed to robust community engagement and learning from community members, council members, and other elected officials about conditions on the ground. I've been with most of the council members visiting your district, learning from the community, and I'm committed to continue working with the council member across the 5 boroughs. These budgets reflect the value and invest of $150 million for projects in the Bronx, which will fund major safety and streetscape projects, including protected bike lanes on 3rd Avenue and Soundview Avenue, a new neighborhood safety improvement in Bronxdale, Cobb City, Melrose, and Mount Haven. The agency continues to transform the Grand Concourse. With our partners and at DDC and DEP, we will be completing the most recent phase of our Grand Concourse transformation from East 175th Street to East Fordham Road. This budget will include $32 million for the next phase of this project below East 161st Street. In addition, this budget funds nearly a dozen safety and quality of life capital projects citywide, including nearly $70 million to fix street flooding and raised grade in Somerville, Queens, $10 million to fix flooding and make safety improvements along Avenue J in Brooklyn, $26 million to expand our Greenway network and add safety improvements in Travis Avenue and Staten Island, and $31 million to make important bike transit and pedestrian safety improvements in the inward section of the Manhattan Waterfront Greenway, extending our protected Greenway network from Harlem River Drive to Broadway and University Heights Bridge. Enhancing safety for students is also a top priority for this administration. DOT and DDC will begin construction this year of several contracts for school safety improvements in Brooklyn and Staten Island. Other school safety projects in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Queens are in final design and will begin construction as soon as next year. Next year, we will begin design and construction for our upcoming citywide race crosswalk design build contract. This project will build more than 100 race crosswalks, a high priority intersection across the 5 boroughs. Where there's race or crosswalk, drivers slow the speeding and thus save lives. On the bike lanes, DOT continues to grow our 1,500 miles of bike lanes citywide, the largest network in the nation. We are on track to install a record numbers of protected bike lanes in 2023 to harden more than 10 miles of existing bike lane. And on automatic enforcement, this budget provides $7 million in FY24, ramping up to nearly $10 million in FY27, and in the baseline for the operation and maintenance of 24/7 speed cameras. Speed cameras save lives. Since we launched 24 hours operation in August, DOT has experienced 31% reduction in violation during the new overnight and weekend hours, meaning less speeding and enhanced safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. On mobility and accessibility, DOT also continue our work to make it easier and faster to travel around the city for all New Yorkers, regardless of race, ability, and economic status. In 2022, DOT installed accessible pedestrian signal at a record 494 intersections citywide to help New Yorkers who are blind or low vision navigate the city. This budget also includes over $3 billion in capital funding over the next 10 years to continue pedestrian ramp installation and upgrades citywide. The DOT will also be doing more curb maintenance as this is something that we heard a lot about the New Yorkers and elected officials. This budget includes $21 million to replace approximately 150,000 feet of new curbside citywide. Turning to buses, DOT has a number of important bus projects coming up this year that will speed up buses and get New Yorkers where they need to go faster and safer. These include projects on University Avenue, Gun Hill Road, and Fordham Road in the Bronx, Northern Boulevard in Queens, Livingston Street in Brooklyn, and 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, and the Washington Bridge. Construction is scheduled to begin by the end of this year for our larger capital investment in both priorities to date, along Kings Highway, Florence Avenue, and Pennsylvania Avenue in Brooklyn. I'm also happy to report that in partnership with MTA, we recently received broader authority from Albany to crack down on drivers who impede bus operation by double parking, blocking bus stops, or blocking bike lanes starting in 2024. Automatic enforcement changed driver behavior. Only 19% of drivers who receive a bus camera violation receive a second one. And only 8% have received 3 or more tickets. We are excited for this new authority to help buses travel faster. Turning to public space, this administration continues to reimagine the use of public space. All New Yorkers should have access to safe, welcoming, and attractive public space close to where they live, and DOT continue our work toward this goal. As Mayor Adams announced in his State of the City address, this administration added $375 million to improve public spaces. This includes funding that will allow us to start design on projects to connect Madison Square to Herald Square between 21st and 33rd Street as part of the Broadway Vision Plan and Reconstruction. New funding will also support the largest open street program in the nation. Open Street provides new public space for recreation, wellness, and opportunity to move outside in all parts of the city. Funding will allow us to make permanent upgrades to open streets in Willis Avenue between East 147th Street and Bergen Avenue in the Bronx, Minham Street on Staten Island, Woodside Avenue in Queens, and Quisqueya Plaza in Washington Heights. Applications are currently open for 2023 Open Street program. Please help us to spread the word to community groups in your district. This budget also includes $62 million in new capital funding to make improvement on Jamaica Avenue from Southend Boulevard to Merrick Boulevard. Thanks to the support of Speaker Adams and the Chair, Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Gennaro, and Brooklyn Borough President Richards, and Borough President Richard in Queens, this project will revitalize this central neighborhood corridor by introducing a number of sidewalk and streetscape improvements, building off changes allowed by the new permanent busway. We also recently celebrated the Car-Free Day, an annual car-free event, and are hard at work planning for this year's Summit Street. We were so happy to expand Summit Street program last year into the underserved community of East Harlem, and we'll have more to share soon on how this year's program will be even bigger, the largest one in the history of New York City. As I testified before, DOT faced staffing challenges. All agencies in the whole nation are in the line, but we are in the line with many sectors of economic and municipal government across the country. We are aggressively working to hire and creating a pipeline for future transportation professionals. As part of the Mayor Eric Adams' push to fill vacancy, we have gone to 8 hiring events and make over 100 offers since February. This position range from clerical associate and staff analysis to engineers. Thanks to the Speaker and the Chair and many council members for your help in organizing this event in your districts, as well as our partnership with Henry Garrido at DC 37. In addition, a DOT preliminary budget, I show an initial design of the bus shelters ad campaign about working at DOT. We are recruiting. We want New Yorkers to come and work with us. This campaign is now on the way and is at 100 bus shelters across all 5 boroughs throughout the city, with more planning in the coming months. In conclusion, I would like to thank the council for this great opportunity to testify before you. We look forward to continue to partner with you to make this city safer, more equitable, and accessible for generations to come. Hoy estamos terminando haciendo a nombre del alcalde Vegana nuestra presentación, donde esperamos que con el apoyo del Consejo Municipal podamos seguir teniendo el presupuesto necesario para seguir haciendo de la ciudad de Nueva York una ciudad que va a ser la más segura para los peatones y los ciclistas. We would now be happy to answer any question.
Thank you, Commissioner. We've also been joined by Council Members Rivera, Barron, Moya, Hudson, Ressler, and Farias. I want to talk about the New York City Streets Plan. Are there program areas that DOT is having particular trouble with meeting their targets?
We are on target, and I will definitely, our colleague here, both from Margaret and Paul, they can add it, but I can say that we are happy to be where we are. As you know, last November, I stand with the mayor announcing that we overpassed everything that we announced back in January 22. In 2023, we have our own goal. We're working hard to be sure that we deliver the numbers of bus lane, bike lane. One thing that also we want to highlight is when we voted the street master plan that I was a co-prime, open street was not included. Open restaurant was not included. So there's many of the things that also we are doing that is adding to these things. But Paul, if you don't want to.
No, I think that's right. Our mandate has continually increased in the programs we do, and we're very excited. I think, as the commissioner mentioned, we are on pace to meet that target. The thing that we would say is, as we go into the busy season of installing, we do need a lot of your support to make sure that we can implement these programs and make sure we have the community buy-in as well.
I think and I've spoken to your team about this before, Commissioner, the one thing that I hear from a lot of my colleagues is when DOT wants to do something, it gets done. When a member thinks something is a good idea, there's a 3-year study that has to happen. So I think we're all on the same page with keeping our streets safe. But if DOT wants to put in a bike lane, that happens overnight. If I want a stop sign, I gotta, call in a favor. So I wish there was more coordination there, because I think ultimately we're all working towards the same goal. But it does seem like when DOT is trying to, meet a target, that gets done quicker than what a local member might want.
Yeah. So I want for our first deputy commissioner to add a little bit when it comes where we are on target. But one thing that I can tell you, we all council members that I have walked, I have seen that. And, being in that side. Sure. Being the guy asking for a lot of things and being told you got to wait years and years and years. I think that a lot for to have someone in this side that also is now so committed, because I lived that experience. When I spoke to the chair about one of her constituencies who say, this is a stop sign and this bumper being approved, how can we move quickly? For me, it's about, we will be done. So we are committed, because Mayor Adams' committed is to build the best relationship between administration and you, the 51 council member, and that's the new, I can say, decision that we have at DOT, do the best we can to build the best relationship, and it will mean to deliver what is important for each council member.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I just want to highlight several areas that we have met or exceeded the streets plan, and also some items that actually aren't mentioned in the streets plan, as the Commissioner discussed. So last year we installed transit signal priority at 750 intersections to improve bus movement. We also installed 500 accessible pedestrian signals, exceeding what our plan was in that regard. We implemented bus improvements that actually help 400,000 bus riders each and every day in the 5 boroughs. We began to harden bike lanes last year. These are bike lanes that were previously not really protected as well as we would like with delineators. We did 10 miles of those, and we added more ped space than we had actually planned to do so. So we're working hard on every front, and we're exceeding in many areas as well.
Is the, or how will the streets plan be affected by congestion pricing?
Right, the streets plan will not be affected by congestion pricing. We're going to continue to do everything that we're doing. In fact, if we can provide more alternatives to people, such as biking and safer roadways for walking, that's certainly a goal of the streets plan in congestion pricing.
Okay, I want to talk about the speed camera enforcement. The FY24 executive budget includes a new need for 24/7 automated speed camera enforcement of $7.1 million in FY24 and $9.2 million in FY25 in the out years. Will this funding be used to support DOT internal jobs and projects, or would it be used for contracts with private companies?
Yeah, I will pass it to Deputy Commissioner Ochoa also to answer.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair. First of all, we're very proud of our speed camera program. As the Commissioner mentioned, we have seen a 30% decrease since it went to 24/7, which means less violations, which is exactly the type of program we want to run. Since the program started, we've also seen a 97% decrease in speeding where speed cameras are located. So this is obviously the policy that we want to achieve. Yes, you're right. The $7.1 million is for staffing, for the ramp up of staffing that we need in order for us to operate the 24/7 violations.
And how many cameras would that funding support?
So we have about 2,200 cameras, and that staffing would be for the 2,200 cameras. So all of them.
And what amount or what percent of cameras will now be able to operate 24/7?
All of them are operating 24/7.
Okay.
And this is an invitation to you and any member of the council if you want to talk about our speed camera program. It's a very robust system that we would be happy to walk you through it.
And one other thing that, and before Margaret add, Deputy Commissioner add something, one other thing that I experienced going to Albany, advocating for the 24/7, even with some legislators that they were against it. They just say, I cannot be for because of the constituency that I represent, but I personally even have changed the way how I drive.
Oh, yeah.
Because when a driver get the second and third ticket, most of them, because the camera 24/7, people change the way how they drive. So having the camera 24/7 is another tool that is allow us to change the culture on how we drive in New York City.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thing to add to maybe your question. From fiscal 14 to 22, we spent about $2 billion in capital and expense to advance Vision Zero, and in that same period, our speed cameras brought in $905 million. So the point is that the city is putting in all the resources that we need to in the Vision Zero effort, regardless of any camera revenue.
Okay, I want to talk about hybrid vehicles. So according to DOT, 34% of its fleet is hybrid or electric. 38% cannot be hybrid or electric at this time. Could you talk a bit about why and if there are plans to upgrade all vehicles possible to hybrid or electric?
Yes, so our DOT's fleet is about 60% what we call medium and heavy duty. These are trucks, big trucks. The technology has not advanced yet to make those electric, but as the technology is present, we will start to transition our fleet over into electric heavy duty vehicles. Right now we are purchasing pretty much every light duty vehicle that we possibly can as an electric vehicle. So our fleet is transitioning over, and we're committed to making that happen.
And by the way, I don't know how many of you saw that we introduced last week the first pilot project having the first electric pedal assist cargo bike that now DOT is using to go do minor repair in bike lanes. So, and also in Brooklyn, in the Navy Yard, we are also working with the new lab that we are also testing, the new battery, the new chargers. So I can say, together with DCAS, DOT is really leading when it comes to accomplish the goal that Mayor Adams has committed to turn our vehicles electric.
Okay, I got two more. Talk about PEGs. So the FY24 exec included PEGs for FY24 in the out years with a total savings of $32.6 million. One of the largest savings, $20 million in FY24, came from savings in the traffic and streets operation program area. Where were those savings found, and what impact will it be to DOT as a result of the PEG?
Yeah. So one of the things that we appreciate on Mayor Eric Adams is his commitment to be fiscal responsible. And we know that it's not an easy thing to run the city of New York. And when it comes to the PEG that we have in front of us, and we'll put that our Deputy Commissioner Shaw, he also explained with more details. But one of the things that I can tell you that all the PEG that we were able to do it we did it without losing a layoff anyone. We were able to continue investing on redesigning our street, running the city. Everyone during the spring, the summer, you will see so many DOT trucks in our community. They're the ones who are resurfacing the street, who are paving the street, who are taking care of the sidewalk. So the PEG, we were able to do the PEG internally without any layoff. But Paul, Deputy Commissioner Cho, can also add with more details.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for that question. Yes, our PEG, we're very proud to have met our PEG target. It was actually $34 million and change. It really came from three main categories. As the Commissioner mentioned, you mentioned contract underspending, traffic and street operations. Those were mainly contract underspending. We are maxing out vendors that are available for us to partner with. So to your question, no, it is not impacting our operations. The other two categories where we met our PEG were, one, recognizing some revenue in the open restaurants law that we expect to pass very soon. So thank you for all of you who have worked on that. And then the rest were grant swaps, which means we are taking in federal dollars and switching them for city tax levy.
Quickly about the capital plan. The capital plan for DOT totals $11.3 billion for FY23 to 27. It's a 4.2% decrease since the prelim. Will any of the projects be affected by the change since the prelim plan?
No, we rolled some dollars to make sure that they match the construction timelines, which means we're just pushing them to better align with the actual construction timelines in partnership with our colleagues at DDC.
And is there equity given consideration when spreading the love for capital improvements?
Yes, that is the types of projects, and I wish I could show you a map to see the types of investments we're making across the 5 boroughs. I don't think there's ever been such a focus at DOT to make sure that we are reaching every corner of the city and making sure that we're spending dollars across all communities.
Okay. Commissioner, in addition to Paul and Rick and Ryan, your team is amazing, very responsive. I have to shout out Claudette Workman and Leroy Branch. I speak to them more than I speak to my wife on certain weeks, and Claudette, as he knows, I'm not lying. And Danielle Zuckerman, too, has been fantastic. So I appreciate the relationship we have, and I think it certainly helps to have a former council member leading the DOT. So we appreciate that you understand our frustration sometimes, and we're all trying to get to the same place. So.
Great. Thank you, Chair. It's been so great to be working with you. From your role in this Finance Committee and Chair of the Transportation Committee, I can say, our agency has one of the best teams when it comes to leadership. I work for them. It's 5,500 men and women that they run our department. For me, it's a great honor to come with experience, to be where I was like you before, learning from the frustration. And this mayor, as Commissioner Chua said, equity is what defines whatever we do at DOT. from opportunity that we want to create inside the agency, to building leadership, to develop projects, to hear from each 51 council member, regardless of the community that you support, what are you need? And we are here to be sure that we work with you guys.
Thank you, Commissioner. We've also been joined by council members Carr, Lee, Wan, Dinowitz, and Joseph, and I'm now going to hand it over to Chair Brooks Powers. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start with the vacancy rate. What is the current vacancy rate for DOT?
Commissioner Cho will explain.
Yes, we have about a 13.1% vacancy, and I do want to highlight the work that the administration has been doing to make sure that we fill those vacancies. As the commissioner said, those hiring halls have been incredibly helpful in bringing in new staff to the team. And aside from the hiring halls, as the commissioner mentioned, we've brought in over 100 people through those hiring halls, but we've also added another 200 people just in our regular staffing. So it is getting better. I'm going to give a shout out to the DC 37 contract and the possibility of the remote work pilot that has also been very helpful in recruiting folks and retaining good talent.
Are there any units of appropriation that have higher vacancy rates than others?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. We do see that our office staff has higher vacancy rates than our field staff typically. That's just, it's not a specific issue to DOT. We see that across the nation in government entities.
But I want to add on the list that we are taking, again, to create a pipeline of the future planners at DOT, or the future engineer at DOT. So working together with Henry Garrido, DC 37, working with the chairman of CUNY, Matos, and Hector Batista, the vice chancellor, we are working, putting memorandum understanding between DOT and CUNY so that we can start recruiting early, since the month before the student graduated. We also, in this summer, are going to be having 150 high school and college students doing internship. Commissioner Forgione, she can explain about her experience and how she started, because her experience that we've been using also to create a pipeline.
Thank you, Commissioner. So as the Commissioner says, we have a very strong emphasis on bringing in younger people and developing their careers and keeping them within DOT. I myself, a number of years ago, was a summer intern, and a lot of my colleagues at a senior level within the agency were also summer interns. So we have a robust program year-round. We have 75 college aides who are with us the whole year. In the summer, we add 75 more summer interns. And then we're working closely with NYCHA to get a very substantial summer youth employment program.
And if you have anyone in your district that you want to send to us, that we'd be interested to do a summer internship, we're ready to work with you.
Okay, thank you for that. How is the budget specifically addressing the vacancy issues, and how is the budget improving the hiring process?
I can take that. So I know our friends at OMB don't get a lot of love at these types of hearings, but they have been very helpful in approving actions much faster. I think they've cut down on the times by about 50%, which has been very helpful to us in onboarding. I think one of the frustrations that you probably heard from agencies is just how long it takes from the time you make an offer to the time they walk in the door, and that time has been cut significantly. So it's not a budget issue per se. I think it's just a process. It's a process improvement, certainly, that takes OMB, the city's city hall's push, and as well as our own HR streamlining systems to make sure that we bring in folks faster.
Besides that, what incentives are offered to DOT employees so that they stay and do not go to private sector jobs or to agencies at other levels of government? Because I know in past hearings, you all have talked about the competitiveness of the private sector.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that probably get into more detail that happened at DOT is that when someone joined the agency, it's very difficult for them to leave. And I can tell you that as someone that was a teacher for 15 years, we know that retention is key. So when I got into DOT, what I got was a great men and women in leadership of DOT, that many of them, they've been working there for 20 and 30 years. So I feel that, when someone had this opportunity to work in the bridges, not only they will be working in the Brooklyn Bridge, on the 24th, we're going to be celebrating the 140 years when the Brooklyn Bridge was built. But they're going to be working, maintaining, paintings, and building close to 800 bridges that we have in the city of New York. When someone joined the Tatiana Ferry, it's about, I think that there's always going to be, other options that people look in life, and in government people rotate. Today you're a council member, tomorrow you can be working the agency, someone can be at DDC, DDP, come in DOT, but I feel that DOT have a high level of retention.
Yeah, and
In
terms-
April-
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, in April, DOT stated that it participated doing a hiring fair with DCAS and DC 37. How many individuals were placed in DOT roles out of this hiring fair?
Yeah, these are the 100, just on those hiring fairs, we brought in about 100 people that have already started at DOT. And they're across the divisions. As the commissioner mentioned, we brought in engineers that get sent to bridges. We brought in clerical associates that get sent to traffic ops, electrical engineers, city planners. It really runs the gamut of type of individuals we've been able to recruit.
That's good. I also want to get into the staffing levels to understand that better. Is there an optimal staffing level that exists within DOT, such that all jobs can be done and there's no gap in services? So DOT has a number of mandates from streets plan to other laws that are in place. So what is that sweet number in terms of the staffing that would allow, in the perfect world, for all of those jobs to be able to happen and there be no gap in service?
Yeah. We have 744 vacant positions. I would love to hire all 744 positions.
But what's the need?
The reality is we make do with what we have at any given moment. If we have more staff, that means we can spend more OTPS, which means we can do more projects. That is normal. What we've said at this hearing is that the PEG did not impact any of our current work given our current levels of staffing. I think we have a very strong support from City Hall to, if it gets to a point where we actually fill these vacancies and we need more money to match the OTPS, we were going to have those conversations to make sure we're properly funded to do all the good work that New Yorkers expect from us.
So are you saying that the 744 is what's needed to be an optimal head count? Or is there another number?
Yes, I am always going to try to fill all our vacancies. The current staff that we have allows us to do the work that we're being asked to do right now. We can always do more with more.
And Chair, if you don't mind, let me add to this that, look, we will continue coming in front of the council, and the question is going to be, how is DOT doing the street master plan? And I said before, and then the question will be, have you done the bus lane? Have you done the bike lane? Those have been the two of the areas that we are measuring the street master plan.
Don't get too ahead. I'm going to get there.
So I said before, when we were having those meetings, right, at the council that I was part, and we were addressing, during COVID, and we put together our street master plan, open street, open restaurant was not part of that. The piece that I know that many of you council members that I was in that seat before, we're dealing with, is that when we had to work with those two areas, bus lane, bike lane, which is the two that when say, have you accomplished those? Many of you have challenges in your own district. And sometimes when we go with those plans.
Commissioner, I do want to spend some time on that, but I just want to stick on staffing for the moment. So what would be the PS cost for the staffing level for the 744?
The PS cost would be what we have in the budget. We are budgeted to be fully staffed.
Okay. Let's get into streets plan. It seems like that's where you want to go. So just piggybacking off of Chair Brandon's questions earlier, I know you keep mentioning that when streets plan was adopted that there was no open dining. It's been some time now that you've been saying that in the hearing, so I'm curious to know, in fiscal '24 in the proposed budget, will it take into account open dining, especially since, given that DOT has requested to oversee the open dining program. So will the budget take into account the fact that you now have open dining so as you can still meet those goals of the streets plan? Because now it's there, you've requested it, you've said DOT can handle it, but if the streets plan is not, meeting the goals, it shows that the agency may need more staff, may need more resources, and we need to understand that better, because we don't want to not meet the goals of open streets, because that is a priority.
So first of all, thank you to you and the speaker and the whole council member for being working with the administration here at DOT and to aid the bill that now the program of open restaurant is under, it will be under DOT. We saved 100,000 jobs because of open restaurant. We had 12,000 open restaurants during COVID. Chair, before COVID, 80% of what is open restaurant, sidewalk type, in Manhattan, they were mainly downtown Manhattan. For the first time, we got to see family that they were able to have a tables and chair where to eat outside the Midtown Manhattan, downtown Brooklyn, Long Island City. So definitely open restaurant is going to be a big one. Yes, we will have the resources. When it comes to the street master plan, thanks to Mayor Adam's commitment to put the money where his word is. DOT has all the resources that we need for us to do the job, weather permitting, because also most of the work that we do is during the spring, the summer, and the fall. We hope that we will have good months to do the work, and we hope again that as we engage in conversation with all of you 51 council members, that also we get your support to go the bus lane, the bike lane that we need in order to accomplish our street master plan.
Thank you for that. And how many, like you said earlier that you are on target for the Streets Plan 2023 mandates. How many bus lanes are you required to build in 2023? What's the number? I only want the number. I don't need the narrative.
Well, over a 5-year period, we're looking at 150 bus lane miles or improved bus lanes. So it's not necessarily a consistent amount every year.
And how many bike lanes?
So we're looking at doing 25 to 30 protected miles of bike lane this year and about 50 miles of total bike lane.
And when we have met with the advocate, TA, and Family for Safe Street, and everyone, one of the things that we heard from them is about how important it is to also focus on the quality, not just only the quantity, but we also are focusing on both the quantity and the quality of the bike lane. That's why this year, for the first time, with your support, we widening the bike lane in 9th Avenue. And that's why last year we were able to harden 10 miles of bike lane, and this year we're going to be hardening another 10 miles of bike lane that will improve the safety of cyclists in our city.
How many bus lanes have been built this year to date?
With the things that I said, we want to focus,
I just want the number, Commissioner.
We cannot give you the number because we work around the weather. And that's something that, it
But
is
do you
now.
know how many were built to date? You should be able to tell us how many to date have been built. I'm not saying what your projection is. As of today, how many have been built is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so let me mention that we have just entered our installation season. We can't lay down markings. We can't do most of our asphalt work in the wintertime. So we are actually just entering the implementation season. So it would be better for us to be able to update you in just a little bit on all the projects that are underway.
Do you have monthly projections for the construction?
We more deal in seasons, so maybe we can talk about the projects that we do have planned for 2023. So we have University Avenue in the Bronx, Gun Hill Road, Northern Boulevard, Queens, Fordham Road, Livingston Street in Brooklyn, 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, and the Washington Bridge. So we have a lot of bus projects that are in various stages of discussion with the community and in implementation.
And considering that it was a pretty mild winter and it wasn't that many snow, did any construction take place in the winter this year since we had good weather?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not really that nimble in that our marking contractors, they can't bring their people on for like a day or two. So we officially, and the weather has to be in the 50s in order to lay markings or paint. So winter is really difficult.
And then when answering questions about the failure to meet streets plans targets, DOT had cited various issues with contractors who were unable to meet delivery requirements. How is DOT holding these contractors accountable, and has DOT considered seeking alternative contractors?
So one of the challenges that we've had is the marking contractors. There are a limited number of marking contractors because there is very expensive equipment that goes with this work. A vehicle costs many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we are working to see who else in the industry could possibly join this workforce, and if there are ways to develop other vendors to bring more people in to be able to do that work. We're also increasing our in-house capability, which is always very useful to be able to do it ourselves.
And in April,
And
DOT
Chairman, if you don't mind adding to that, how we're working to accomplish those goals, which is very interesting, I know for you and for many of us, is that Mayor Adam with Michael Garner, the new director of the NWBE, is so committed that by 2025, $25 billion of contract must be going to women and minority. So we are also having a lot of, last night I was at 48th Street together with Michael Garner, all the commissioners, engaging in that conversation about the step that we are taking to be sure that more women and minority are on board. And we are also working with those traditional ones who are not all women and minority, having a friendly, engaging conversation to say, help us to accomplish this goal. So what we will see happen in the next couple of months or year is an expansion of more options that we are building as a result of Mayor Adam Committee to put $25 billion in contract to women and minorities.
Did you say 25% or 25 million?
$25 billion by 2025. That's Mayor Adams' commitment of the money on contract that will be going to women and minority.
Thank you. In April, DOT said it was finalizing a contract for a new team to install benches and real-time bus information at bus stops. Has that contract been finalized?
I think you're talking about the real-time passenger information contract, which will be very beneficial in that it will be looking to power these devices through solar, which is much more efficient in that we don't have to do any trenching, and obviously it's good for a number of reasons. So we are in the process of still finalizing that contract. That contract has not begun.
DOT staff has informed the council that contractors set to supply cameras needed to enforce protected bus lanes had also been delayed because of the supply chain issues. Have these issues been resolved, and what is the status of the cameras?
Yeah, we have not, we have all of our cameras in place. So I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but at this moment, all of our speed cameras, our red light cameras, they're all in place. We don't, our vendor is not having any issues supplying that.
Okay, that was the information shared on a call that you all had with us earlier this year. So you're saying that they're now all in place?
We will check and make sure and follow up on the conversation from earlier.
And Commissioner, I was glad to hear you bring up the MWBE projects, because that was something that's been of concern to me. I've been excited to see DOT in the streets, especially in my community, doing the work because the season is here, as you mentioned. But in terms of the companies that being contracted, the workforce that we see, a lot of times they don't look diverse. And so I'm really interested in what the diversity looks like in terms of the workforce and the contractors that you have currently put in place to do this seasonal work. Like, do you have like the numbers in terms of MBEs, particularly your Black businesses and your Latino businesses, and in terms of the workforce, do you have it broken down also by race?
Yeah, as I said before, in the name of everyone that come here without speaking the language, I'm not going to be wasting my time as a commissioner without pushing equity in real way, especially for women and minorities. So, you know, as a former and current organizer, former teacher, council member, I can share with you that last year we only have 11% for women and minority. Right now, I can tell you that by June 30, we will be on 20% for contract for women and minority. We are almost doubling. What used to be like 40 or 60 million contract that went to women and minority, now is going beyond $160 million. And that's only the beginning, because this mayor is committed to be progressive by action on economic justice. And we are overdue when it comes to a city that we spend billions and billions of dollars, and women and minority and Black and Latino working class has never been having a chair on the table when it comes to having contracts. So yes, we are moving progress at DOT, and this administration, Mayor Eric Adams, is only at the beginning what New York City will see in his time as a mayor.
11% and 20% is a huge jump, which is great. So how, like, what contracts has gone out that has led to that jump?
I can take it. So a lot of our legacy contracts did not have MWBE goals, so the way that we're reaching this doubling of numbers is by requiring every time we have to renew or issue new contracts that have to set clear goals that are both reachable from the vendor side and serve the policy that the commissioner mentioned. So we're tagging that 30% MWBE goal to each one of the contracts that we are reissuing as an agency.
Of the ones that you've reissued, do you have a breakdown in terms of what the percentage for
Yep.
The Black businesses?
Yep.
And the
So, as a
Latino? I
commissioner-
want them separate, though. I don't want the Black and brown together. I want
No. So
them
I
separate.
we do have them separate. As the commissioner mentioned, year to date, we are at about $130 million, which is year to date is like 19%, but we do expect to get well beyond the 20% actually. So out of the $130 million, $22 million has gone to Black-owned businesses, 18 has gone to Hispanic-owned businesses, 37 has gone to women-owned businesses, and 49 has gone to Asian-owned businesses.
And then in terms of the women, what's the breakdown with that?
The women would be white women. Otherwise, it would be captured under Black or Hispanic or Asian.
And we are, Chair, this in the summer now, we're going to be holding our second day of doing business with DOT.
I would love to co-host one.
So more than happy. So what I did also, and that's how we'll be also getting our numbers. Not only we are taking the initiative, bringing women and minority. Last night, we were, as I said, with Michael Gardner, more than 250 business owners, Latino and Black and Asian, you know, being informed about how to navigate. But also, I've been meeting with those who are not NWB, and I've been asking them, help me to accomplish this goal. And I can tell you that we've been getting so good results. Carlos, who lead that unit in their DOT, that is in charge to be sure that we get our number in NWB, he's doing a great job. And under the supervision that we have with Han and Nancy and others, I'm confident that this is only again a beginning. Like 20% is good, but we need to go higher.
And that's why, and looking at these numbers is why I always emphasize the minority side, because what we do find with the women's side, that it's often really white women, which really contributes to the overall majority number. And so would love to co-sponsor, and I'm sure my colleagues here would in their districts as well, opportunities to work with the Department of Transportation to see more of an increase, because when you look at diversity, Black and Hispanic firms are still the underutilized categories. And when you look at Black women, even lower. And so it's important, like if we're really trying to make some change in how the industry operates, we have to look at how we're contracting. So I'm really glad to hear that you're tacking that on. But like, let's look at it a little bit more granular and see how do we pull up these businesses to give them the opportunity. Because today it may be a DOT project, they get that city experience, and then they go to another agency, and next thing you know, they may be with SCA, MTA, or whatever. So that's something that's important.
And Chair, and yes, to add on what we are doing is also that we also working with Lisa Flores, who also is the Director of Contract. to be sure also that those small businesses, they know how to navigate the system too. And so I just feel that, all of us being advocating for that to happen. But sometimes what we have seen was also like that vacuum conversation, and it's like people talk about equity, but is equity action or is equity word? Is a commitment, WBME, or something that only we come and say that is important for us? Are we getting results? So one thing that also we are doing is to be sure at DOT that the members of committee that evaluate contract also reflect the diversity of our city, which is something new that we are bringing to the agency. So in every single agency, unit that I have, the direction, because this is important for Mayor Eric Adam that has given is, each panel that review contract must be diverse. So that's helping us also getting the message, but also knowing that there's an action and there's a direction given by the mayor knows that we need to address the lack of access for women and minorities to get contract. They are there. They know how to do the work. They just have not been having the opportunity to be part of those contracts.
Okay, so there's two quick categories I want to hit so I could be able to pass it off to my colleagues to ask questions, and then I'll come back after. So trucking enforcement and 53-foot tractor trailers. Yesterday we received a letter detailing DOT's efforts to improve trucking enforcement and address problems related to 53-footer trucks illegally present on our streets. We had asked questions about the resources devoted to trucking in DOT and specifically to the Freight Mobility Unit. Your response said there were several vacancies in the Freight Mobility Unit, but you didn't specify how many. How many positions are you hiring for, and what are these positions? And your response also said DOT has limited visibility in the activities of 53-foot trucks that are illegally on our streets. How can we increase visibility, and how does this budget help the DOT better address this issue?
So maybe I'll start. We do have a handful of vacancies in our freight mobility unit.
How many
These are-
exactly?
I'd have to get back to you. We'll see if we have the information here. But it's a fairly small number. These are planner type people. People who have a background, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the trucking industry, but with city planning types of work. When we talk about like a lack of eyes on what's happening out there, there are a lot of activities on a lot of streets. We work closely with NYPD to highlight if there are certain areas in the city that we believe enforcement is needed, and we request that they do over-dimensional truck enforcement in that way. We're also, as you probably are aware, looking at overweight trucks on the BQE and putting in place a weigh-in-motion program there. And if that program is successful, it's definitely the type of program we'd want to see expanded elsewhere in the future.
Thank you. The last category I want to touch on, excuse me, is parking. I want to touch briefly on the investments. Sorry, allergies are trying to take me out this year. I want to touch briefly on investments in parking citywide. How much does DOT allocate to investments in parking in its capital and expense budgets?
Just to clarify, Councilmember, do you mean like garage parking, or like traffic operations, metering of parking?
Sorry. So in terms of just the assets in the city, in terms of street parking, municipal parking.
Okay, we're looking for that
Let
number.
me say a little bit on the street parking, and then the procedure with the municipal parking. One thing that I want, I always tell people on parking the street is that we have to realize that New York City only had 350 square miles of 8.6 million people, 50 million visitors. So there is a salsa, un merengue, una salsa que dice, no hay cama para tanta gente. I mean, there's no bed for so many people. I tell people, you know, I come from the community living in England that people believe that the street belongs to those who need to park. So we are changing the culture, teaching people we have to share the street. The street is not only for those who need to do the park. We get when people in Queens, in Brooklyn, in places, they live they have the house 15 blocks from the train station where the car is needed. But there's other places in the city that people buy a car to use it twice a week and park in the street. So we need to be sure, again, that, DOT oversee all those miles of street that many individuals need to park. So we're working hard to be sure that, you know, we share the street for those who need to park, but also the street also to be used for pedestrians, for cyclists, for open street, for open restaurant.
And I hear you, and I do think that DOT has a responsibility to also ensure that there is parking, even if there are municipal lots or garages available, because as we look to share the streets, we got to remember that everyone's quality of life needs to be taken into account as well. I find that when we see cars blocking bike lanes and bus lanes, you know, that's really concerning. So I think to be able to move them off the streets is to give them somewhere to go, because the cars have not disappeared, and we may want to wish them away, but that's not the reality. And so you talk about the quality of life and the safety for cyclists, for pedestrians, and motorists. And I feel that we have to include that in the conversation when we talk about DOT and its mandates, because the quality of life impacts everyone at the end of the day. So we can't act like they don't exist. I would often talk about when I travel now, I'm looking at what the street designs are, and you know where I've gone and I haven't seen any accidents, any horns blowing. There are some areas that they have municipal lots, and so they may not have a lot of street parking, but they have somewhere for the cars to actually go to come off the streets. And so the next question.
So, Chair, if you don't mind, and Paul will add a little bit with that part, but I got to, as I say, we need to share the street. It's understanding that the street is also used for people that they have to use it to park the car. And that we also, DOT run a numbers of public parking garage that, I don't know if Paul wants to add on that one, or Margaret?
We do have about, and we're happy to break it down, but our traffic operations would be in charge of parking. In fiscal 23, we had about $72 million for the parking operation. Now, there's a lot of overlap, obviously, in the question and how you framed it. But I do want to emphasize what the Commissioner said. And we also have competing priorities. The Council has been a leader in asking us to daylight intersections, for example, and that takes away parking. So we just have to balance the different priorities as well.
And how many parking spots are there by borough? Is there adequate supply to meet the demand in outer borough neighborhoods with limited access to public transit?
So I would say that in less dense neighborhoods, obviously there is adequate parking, and then in areas where there are a lot of people, a lot of competition for the spaces, there's not enough. But what we would like to mention is that we have several initiatives that you might, if you're not aware of, you find interesting. The first, well, I'm sure you're aware of our neighborhood loading zone program, where we're adding hundreds of loading zones in critical locations to prevent double parking, mainly of commercial vehicles or vehicles for hire vehicles waiting for passengers. That kind of thing, that can really alleviate congestion and find a dedicated place for those vehicles. And then at night, they generally revert to residential parking. So if somebody's driving away for the day to go to work, when they come back at night, they can park. And the other thing is we recently launched a double parking portal where we're looking for comments from the community on areas that are problematic that we can delve into deeper and see what treatments we can provide there.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, but I'm going to yield to my colleagues to get through their questions.
Thank you, Chair. We have questions from Narcisse, followed by Ariola.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairs. Commissioner, thank you for coming. Is there any funding in the budget for expansion of ferries? So maybe I can be hopeful to further in southern Brooklyn?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. I believe the ferries you're talking about are EDC ferries, so we would not have that question but I'm happy to either connect you or follow up with our EDC partners.
Because they told me that you're very much involved in it too. I have to talk to DOT.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we run the starting and the ferry, and we do the ferry that go to Hart Island, which is the largest public cemetery in the whole nation. So those two are under our control, but the other one is run by EDC, but more than happy to follow you.
So why they push me to a Jew? Okay, but that we'll get back on that one. Rocks on the Patagate Avenue, right? How to get there? I mean, is there a request because there is so many people sending me texts to said why we having rocks and there's nobody biking on the Patagate Avenue. The Patagates is the most complaint that I get in my office.
Okay, so is that about a bike lane that is not being used? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah,
Okay.
the rocks, not the bike.
Oh, city bike racks.
You know, keep in mind, I'm not against rocks, but I'm saying like the people in the community saying there's so many, and why? Because nobody's using them and they've been standing there.
So more than happy to follow with you, Council Member, but one of the things that I got to say down to this administration, we are committed to connect all community with city bike share, and micromobility. That's our goal. One of the things that I got to say, born and raised in 1965, my father had a bike. As an immigrant, we've been told that bike is a symbol of poverty, and now it's more the upper class and middle class to get into the bike, because if you ride in half an hour every day, you will extend 6 years to your life. So what we are doing is also engaging the conversation, and more together, more than happy to partner with you to also go to the community and talk about what is the benefit if we bike, because sometimes
I love it. I love biking. I'm supporting. But I'm just saying the community is saying how they place in the area where they can use for other things and no one is using the racks.
Yeah, more than
And that's
happy
a
to follow
complaint.
with you, yeah.
Okay, the street calming for the turn. I'm wondering, is that possibility that we can use the same approach for the regular street for the bumps? Because I have so many requests for speed bumps, and I'm wondering if we can use the same approach for the actual street.
Right. We have looked a little bit at a device you could bring in for a street hump in that regard, but we haven't found anything that we think is going to be feasible and going to be able to withstand a plow in the wintertime. So at this point, we're not able to utilize the left turn treatments as speed humps, but maybe we can talk with you right afterwards. You can tell us which speed hump studies in particular you're interested in us advancing, and we'll see everything that we can do.
No, because you have a lot of street, like you have in residents in East 18th Street between Forster Avenue and Glenwood Road. That's not my district,
Okay.
but we have complained that's a city council approach. That been waiting for 2 years. I have some in my district too that been waiting for a long time, and I can go on and on. It's 56. It's 56 between L&M. There's so many, so I'm wondering we have to use a different strategy to see how we approach it. If that system is taking too long, since I'm hearing a lot of vacancies and different things, but the people that dying, we're talking about safe street, so I'm thinking about something we should be doing a little more.
More than happy to follow with you.
Okay. So how long the project take approximately for the record? The process.
One other thing, well, what we need to do is examine the areas to confirm the incidence of speeding. We need to actually inspect the areas to see compatibility physically for speed humps, and then we need to do installation. And keep in mind that we pave 1,150 lane miles every year, and we have to put back the existing speed humps on top of it, as well as put in new ones. So those are some of the challenges, but what we'd also would like to offer is that we have other tools in our toolbox that we could potentially utilize to calm a street down. So maybe there's also other things we can do.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Claudette. Claudette always on top of things for us.
And that's what we're here in our hearing. I've been committed since day one to always have my borough commissioner
Yes.
And as also my chief of staff, to be sure that beside that we come here and testify, and the intergovernmental that we follow with you on any particular request that is important for you and for your constituency. Thanks.
Okay, we have a question. We've been joined by council members Sanchez and Abreu. Now we have questions from council members Ariola, followed by Rivera.
Thank you, chairs. Thank you, Commissioner, and your entire team for coming today. I'd like to talk about potholes. So how much funding does the DOT allocate towards pothole repairs?
Okay, on every given day, we have pothole crews in every borough, and over the winter, when we can't pave, we convert paving crews into pothole crews, and of course, during the inclement weather, we have more potholes. So we
Right.
field pothole crews as needed. We also do blitzes during, usually it's the April time when the potholes tend to appear in order to make sure we're addressing everything.
So does the department keep track of how many potholes they've filled in a year's time? So how many last year and how many this year thus far?
By the way, I'm gonna call Irina.
Good.
Fine.
To please sit with us also. Irina, you can come.
Come on up.
So one of the things that I can say, Irina oversee everything about our roadway. More than 1,200 men and women, paving, resurfacing, pothole, and those are, again, and when talk about retention and people with great leadership. So she's one of those, if you don't mind to answer that question.
Hello, everybody.
I just need to swear you in first, sorry.
Yes.
Do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, and you will honestly and faithfully answer council member questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I believe your question was
turn
about
on the
potholes. How many have we done to date, calendar
Right.
year to date? Is that your question? As of the 17th, we have completed over 90,500 potholes throughout the city.
That's great. And do you keep track of potholes where you need to repair the same pothole more than once?
We keep track of that in each borough, and locations that are prone to potholes are generally prioritized for resurfacing in that community board.
Right, and the complaints that I get about the pothole fixing, it's not the amount of time it takes for the DOT to come out or the diligence in filling those potholes. In fact, it's quite efficient, but it's the material used for the pothole seems to kind of granularize and it breaks up right away. So I just wondered, why is a material such as that being used to fill a pothole where if there's a hard rain, the pothole is there again. It seems to kind of just turn into stone.
Well, we are always focused on improving our quality and quality of our repairs. And for individual potholes, I would have to look into the specific conditions because sometimes to make the area safe, we have to get there right away and we use a material known as cold patch. And that is not meant to be a permanent repair. We generally use the same material for pothole repair that we use for resurfacing of streets, but any sort of defect that you have, it's not going to hold up as well as a resurfaced street without potholes.
Okay, and I just have one more question. When you do come to resurface a street, first you do the milling, and then it stays milled for a little bit of time. But for the people on that block that you've milled, seems like an eternity. So what can I say to them when they call the office and say, when will my street be paved? What's the standard time from the end of milling to the time it gets paved?
Our goal is to return to a milled street within 15 days. Sometimes it can be sooner, sometimes it's a little later. And there are efficiencies built into that time frame. First, we want to give the utility companies, and even not big companies, but even somebody who is a plumber, an opportunity to be able to do repairs underneath the asphalt and not have to cut up the street immediately after. So we conduct extensive coordination efforts with our sister agencies such as DEP and also utility partners throughout the 5 boroughs. So that's one of the major considerations. But another consideration is our pace of paving. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but we pave much faster than mill. So in order for us to spend our hard-earned resurfacing dollars properly, we have to have enough milled area to then go and pave as fast as possible to cover more lane miles in any given community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, chairs.
Offer to board chair is if you like one day, we can take you for you to see the plant under the BQE that together with the one in Queens, we DOT produce 50% of the asphalt that we use. And last year, for the first time, we also started mixing plastic and how we recycle, the material. Everything started when we buy the rock upstate New York, and that's why you see those trucks like paving and marking, because we use those material back. But Chair, more than happy again to, if you want for a delegation of the council member to take you one day so that you can see the whole process when we produce the asphalt too. Thank you.
Now we have Councilmember Rivera, followed by Dinowitz.
Thank you so much for being here and for all of your hard work. I'm going to ask my questions. I guess I'm going to front end the questions if that's okay, since I don't have much time. So last year, this council passed a bill, which I was honored to carry, that created a Greenway master plan for New York City that you all were in support of. We understand that federal funding has been allocated toward the creation of this master plan. Can you give us an update on how the plan is coming, what city resources are being used to support these efforts, and what type of city funding is going towards those efforts? Have any capital dollars been identified for any portion of this plan? My second question is, I have three. I represent an environmental justice community with over 10,000 families living in public housing next to the FDR Drive, which exposes them to harmful air pollution resulting in higher rates of asthma and other negative health outcomes. So DOT has begun a study to evaluate treatment options for the FDR Drive below 14th Street that will reduce carbon emissions and pollution levels in the area. This is a really big priority for my community and started when we were discussing the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. I want to thank you for undertaking this study. It's really exciting. Is there dedicated funding to complete this study in the next fiscal year? And has the department identified any capital funding that could be used for recommended projects or in similar projects to reduce pollution levels? And then my final question is on open streets, and thank you for including that in your testimony. When is the Avenue B open street going to get some of these capital improvements, even planters or something, to make it clearer to drivers to go slow and share the street? Thank you very, very much.
Yep. I'm going to start with the Greenway, and then my colleague here, they will follow. But I got to say, again, for all of us role, looking at Greenway, before we talk about Greenway, we're thinking more about let's redesign the entry to a park. Now, in our time, we learned that most people who died during COVID, they didn't die just because of COVID. They die because they're dealing with asthma, obesity, and respiratory condition, living in a community without having so much green space. So that's why the new approach that we have right now is not only about the entry to a park when we look to Greenway. That's why now on the Mayor Regatta and with the funding that administration and you, the council put together, we are spending $1 million on looking at reimagining a Greenway from Van Cortlandt Park to Randall's Island. Bringing justice to what Robert Moses unfortunately did to our community, blocking community to waterfronts. So that Greenway is going to be one of the biggest projects that we are looking right now, having access to cyclists, to pedestrians. So the Greenway plan is going to be, the Greenway plan is due 12/1/24, and we are on track to do so, but I just wanted to highlight that particular one.
Yeah, and one quick thing on Green Wave, we have just this month opened up a highway, we call it a highway yard, but a yard in Brooklyn, where we have our crews coming out of to do Green Wave work only. And we've been able to rent some equipment to get them started before we buy the capital equipment, and we've hired the staffing for that location. We can get you like a more well-rounded view on anything else related to Green Wave, but we are advancing and doing the hiring and getting the vehicles on.
What's your other question?
Right. As far as the FDR study, I do know we are doing that with some other city agency partners. I don't believe anything in terms of capital improvements associated with that, like capital money we've gotten to that stage yet. So we'd also want to get you a detailed update, but it will be completed the winter of this year into next year. So over the winter, we'll complete that. And the study is fully funded, but not any improvements that would come from the study. And then for Avenue B for Open Street, if we need to strengthen the message out there to get that to drivers, we can make sure that we can get some planters out there this season. Yeah.
And on open streets, Councilmember, you may have seen that we've just released an RFP to support our open streets citywide. It's a $30 million contract to precisely do the work that you're asking, both on the staffing, on the maintenance, and on potential fixtures that we can do, non-capital fixtures that we can do. We're also continuing to offer refunds for organizations who seek to do programming, up to $20,000 for them to plan their open streets seasons.
And Chair and the council member, this is the moment that the window is open, they get closed. There's a $30 million RFP is out, still is open. So those of us that are looking for the first time also, this open street will include a mandated or the 30% for women and minority, but also we want that you help to disseminate those information. So if there's anyone across the 5 boroughs in the city that you feel that they have the capacity that they can respond to the RFP, this is the moment we need to look and work together to disseminate this information.
Thank you.
Now we have questions from Councilmember Dinowitz, followed by Hudson.
Didn't catch that. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon? Good afternoon. Thank you. First, I just want to recognize that the DOT has been making wasn't that funny? Oh, good. Accessibility upgrades in my district. I've seen all around. I want to thank you. That's incredibly important that our city is accessible to all. And I appreciate you mentioning the Van Cortlandt Park Greenway. Would love your help in pressuring the MTA to give us access to the space we need to continue that bike path. I have a few questions. Some of them, obviously relate to budget. I'm concerned about the turnaround time for things like speed hump requests, stop signs, and things like paint. Do you have an average turnaround time for when those are requested, when those actually, even a response happens, that it gets on the timeline? And in line with that, I would tell you that we've had a lot of issues in my office with members of the DOT not responding to emails. We sent requests about painting 2 parking spaces in August, and the response we got was that we're making very important safety upgrades and we can't get to the paint and we don't have a timeline. And I know the DOT is very quick at things because when you want to do something, it takes you just a couple weeks to do whole lane reductions and bus bulbs. It doesn't take you that long when the DOT wants to do something. So I'm interested to know what the turnaround time is when requests are made, and if 9 months is typical turnaround time for things like paint. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and we can, because same as Councilmember Rivera is very smart, time. The speed cushions, which is on your website as a feasible traffic calming measure, which are like speed humps but that don't interfere with bus routes. Every time we were told once that you don't do those, even though they're on your website. We were told from the Bronx DOT that you don't do speed cushions, again, even though they're on your website, and it's one of the tools in your toolbox. And lastly, the car share. I understand, you're trying to reduce the number of cars. How much money does the DOT get from the private companies that are now benefiting from the street space that they are now taking up from residents of New York City?
Sure, so I'll start and then others can chime in. So in terms of the painting 2 spaces that you requested, if I will get them from you afterwards, or Darisa Cruz, our Deputy Borough Commissioner, can also get them from you, and we will try to get those done as soon as possible. The challenge we have, as we mentioned earlier to the chair, is that we don't have an abundance of marking contractors. So we need to mark roadways after we pave them. We are doing other projects as well. So sometimes the little things are hard to fit in, but Councilmember, we will make sure we fit that in for you in the next month or two.
I appreciate it. It's an example. It's just an
understand.
example, and it was in August. It was during the summer. It wasn't during the winter months when you don't do it. I'll get you the number, but it really was about, is it typical for it to take 9 months to paint things? And the same question about the speed humps, the stop signs. It's what's your turnaround time, both, for every step of the process?
Right. We do have a number of months for a speed hump backlog, as we discussed a few moments earlier. We have a number of months to review them, and then we have to schedule them to go in, and that will also take a number of months. So I won't try to say that that is a quick process. We would like to speed it up. We have a lot of competing demands, though, in our asphalt area.
Okay, you don't have like a. I mean,
we have one crew that does speed hump
installations. You don't keep track of the number, though. It's.
I don't have the number with me, but we can get that number for you.
Okay.
And then we are getting the answer to your car share question.
I have the car share. It's $475 per permit, and that permit is for 2 parking spaces.
Per year?
Mm-hmm.
Man, if I could find 2 spots for $400 per year, I'd be a very popular, cool guy, but I'm not. And so, but these are private companies that are, paying not that much. And do you get a commission from does the DOT get a commission? I mean.
Well, Councilmember, the advantage of the car share program is that we see about a 7% reduction in car ownership and also vehicle miles traveled. So if you don't have a car, your personal car that you're constantly looking to store, you're not circulating through your neighborhood unnecessarily looking for a parking space. If you instead get rid of your car because you have one more readily available that you can rent in the neighborhood and not schlep to some other location, that's a benefit for the neighborhood and for the city at large. So that's really the goal in the car share program.
Okay, I guess last question, has the DOT gotten rid of their cars? I mean, how many cars have you reduced your fleet by? What are those numbers?
Right. Have you been a fly on the wall for other conversations? So we are in a constant discussion about how we can reduce our vehicles. And what we do is we've put inspectors on bikes. We have a whole group of highway inspectors that actually do all their work every single day on bikes. As the commissioner mentioned, we've introduced a cargo bike into our fleet that can carry stuff. We're trying to see the feasibility of that. So wherever we can, yes, we are trying to reduce the number of vehicles within the agency.
But I was going through your district, Riverdale. I know that you were very happy to see so many yellow truck and vehicle DOT doing all the very actively right in the last couple of months. So in order for the agency also to do the work, vehicles are also necessary.
Yeah, and do you have the number of cars you've reduced your fleet by? Is there a number?
Over the last few years, DOT's mission has increased. So, for example, we now have people doing open restaurants where we didn't have that years ago. We have inspectors who need to cover many locations in a day. So it is a balancing act, council member, for completing our mission, as the commissioner has said, and reducing vehicles. So we are looking for that everywhere we can.
Okay, thank you for your answers. I'll follow up with those things. Thank you, chairs.
Okay, we have Councilmember Hudson, followed by Ressler.
Thank you so much. I wanted to just revisit the bike lanes. And sorry, I know you probably can't see me back here, but I promise I'm here. I have a cushion too, a seat cushion, but it doesn't make a difference. I just wanted to revisit the bike lanes. I just recently had a fatality in my district. Somebody who was riding home from going grocery shopping in a bike lane, and then a truck on Franklin Avenue was making a right turn without a signal, and sadly killed the cyclist. And so I want to know how many of the bike lanes, protected bike lanes in particular, you're planning to install in FY24, what the budget is for that, if you can share, please.
But Deputy will include the Commissioner here with more details about, where we are on projection to install. But one thing that I want to share with you, and of course you are one of the big supporters, of what we're doing on transportation, is that in 2022, for the first time, we had 200 million bike ridership in the city of New York. And now we have a daily 550,000 bike ridership in the city. So definitely before COVID, but during COVID, and now more than ever, biking is part of moving around the city. So we're working hard to be sure that we address, the challenges of how to improve safety for all pedestrians, but also for cyclists. So numbers of those cyclists who also been dying the last couple of months, been using also electric bike. So we are also getting into a campaign together with all the stakeholders on educating also how to use those electric bikes. And the Commissioner will.
So, Council Member, one project we have planned, I believe, is your district, is Bedford Avenue.
Yeah, it's mostly Councilmember Osei's district, but I have a few
I
blocks of
apologize.
that.
Okay.
And a little bit of Councilmember Wrestler as well.
Wonderful. See, we're trying to hit
And
many of you as we can.
We're all supportive, but my question is,
yeah.
what's the budget for
Yes.
protected bike lanes? How many miles of protected bike lanes have already been put in, and then how many more do we have to go?
Okay.
And what can I do to help expedite, the delivery of protected bike lanes in my district and across the city?
Thank you for asking that question. So citywide, we have 645 miles of protected lanes. About 225 of those are on street. This year, our plan includes about 25 to 30 protected bike lanes, and then a total of 50 miles of bike lanes. So some of those miles are conventional bike lanes.
Meaning not protected?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how many of the 50?
Basically half
50
and
miles.
half. About 25 to 30 will be protected, and the remainder will be conventional.
Okay.
And we very much would love your partnership as we work with communities to bring in the bike lanes. So we really appreciate you and all of your colleagues here to help us as we advance this, and we will speak to you as we're doing that, of course.
And also we are on target to hardening 10 miles this year, as we did it last year too. As you heard from the Commissioner, New York City is the city that had the largest numbers of miles when we compare to other municipalities of bike lane.
That's great. It's something that we should be proud of, but I know that we all want to do more. So, and then just how much does it cost per lane mile of protected bike lanes?
We're going to have to follow up with you on the budget information. We don't break out our budget that way.
Okay.
And every protected lane is slightly different. Some might be protected with a barrier. Some might just be protected with parked cars.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, it would be great if you could follow up. And then just for the record, can you please define how DOT classifies a protected bike lane?
Right. A protected bike lane is separated from traffic. Either it is off the street completely, or it has a form of hard barrier protection. And as I said, that might be parked cars, that might be barrier.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just piggybacking on Councilmember Hudson, and also your statement earlier when you said that you don't have a yearly street plan mandate, but the law actually requires 30 miles of bus lanes a year and 50 miles of protected bike lanes a year. Do you acknowledge those legal mandates?
And we work toward those goals every year.
Okay, because earlier you said that there wasn't an annual goal, and just now what you gave is less than also what the goal is.
Right. What I was trying to get at, Chair, is that we're also looking at it holistically over the term.
But my question earlier wasn't about holistic,
Okay.
it was about the year, and your response to me was that you have an outlook for the 5 years, but you did not at that time acknowledge the annual, which my question was for the year.
Okay.
My memory as to the way that the law was drafted is in the first cycle, there were benchmarks in the first instance for the number of miles to be reached, and then in every subsequent cycle, it was across I believe it's a 4-year period.
My understanding is that they're yearly mandates.
We have to do, the requisite number of miles. We don't dispute that.
So when will DOT have caught up with at least the 2022 streets plan mandate?
So what
We work toward that goal. This is, we feel that, 2023 will be a good year. We have many projects, some of them that are in front of many of you council members, and we will need your support in order for us to have not only the voice of the council member, but also the voice of the community, because we want to be accountable to our numbers, but at the same time, we cannot accomplish those goals when then we go to community and there's not a support for those lanes that we need to deliver.
So right now, do you have a plan of action to complete this in 2023, the 2022 mandate?
We do. We had a plan and we have the money that Mayor Allen has allocated to DOT for us to accomplish our goal on the street master plan.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ressler, followed by Carr.
Thank you very much to our distinguished co-chairs. It's always good to see you, Commissioner. Well, it's really mostly good to see
And
you.
I still love you, okay?
Unless we're talking about the BQE. But I do want to say, I personally feel that under your leadership, DOT has been very responsive to our office, and I really appreciate it. When we bring ideas and issues to you and your staff, to Ryan, to Ricardo, even to Paul, and of course to Keith and Danielle, to everyone, we get creativity and Margaret in response. And I really want to thank you all for that. The work that you did on Schermerhorn, the work that you're doing on McGinnis, the work that you're doing on Livingston, it's going to save lives, and we deeply appreciate it. I did want to continue on the thread that Chair Brooks Powers and Councilmember Hudson and others have been calling out on the bike lanes. We were, of course, very concerned about the number of deaths that we've been experiencing on the road this year. And we're, as I've mentioned in previous hearings, really concerned about the lack of progress that we saw in the PMMR for the first 4 months of the year, where showing only 18 miles of bike lanes had been installed for the